PoE2 Early Access is here, launch day has come and gone. I want to share what I've been playing, my experience so far, a few tips for new players, and just my overall thoughts after getting some hands-on time with the game. I got to play for about 6 or 7 hours yesterday, and only got to about level 15 or 16, so this will only be covering my very early game impressions, all in Act 1. There will be some minor spoilers for some of the very early boss fights, so if you want to be completely blind to that, this is your warning, but I won't spoil anything major. Just a quick note, I noticed while editing this video that I had an issue with the recording of my gameplay. It's been fixed for the future, so it shouldn't happen again, but portions of this video are a little lower resolution and look a little worse, so I apologize for that. The first few hours of early access did have some server issues, but that's 100% to be expected with an online launch of this size, and GGG was transparent on the issues as they were happening, and all things considered, I'd say launch went really smoothly, once they sorted out a couple issues. There was a queue initially, but even when the queue was high, it didn't take long to get through. Once I got through queue, I did actually have some issues with my game crashing, and after googling I found recommendation to turn on power saving mode in Windows settings, and that fixed it for me. So if you've had crashing, go ahead and give that a try and it might help. Once that was sorted out though, I got into the game and it was smooth sailing. I didn't have a single issue after that in the 6 or 7 hours that I played, and honestly I had so much fun and I'm loving the game so far. The first character I created was a sorcerer. As a sorcerer, you start with a fire staff that gives you fireball, and then the first skill gem you unlock is spark. Almost immediately I ran across some enemies that hit pretty hard. These porcupine crabs can be deadly at low levels, but I made it through, and shortly after come across the first mini-boss, the bloated miller. The fight wasn't too bad, but does a good job at showing you that you'll need to pay attention to boss fights and dodge some of their big attacks to survive. After killing him, he actually dropped my first unique, the Crown of Thorns, which has some interesting attributes on it. You get a boost to energy shield and thorns damage, but you lose 5 life every time you use a skill, and it has pain attunement, which makes it so that when you have full life, you deal 30% less critical damage, and you gain 30% more critical damage when you're on low life. So the idea being that while you're in combat, it keeps your life lower, but that in turn makes you crit harder, and hopefully the energy shield can keep you alive. I was a little skeptical how it would work out for me, but I went ahead and equipped it and continued on. Shortly after, I got a couple of my favorite skills so far, Flame Wall and Ice Nova. About 10 minutes later, I stumbled across this witch hut and another mini-boss. This one is completely optional, not part of the story quest or anything, I just found her while wandering around. She gave me a little trouble at first, primarily because of that unique I had picked up. At this level, with very little gear and as a sorcerer, losing life every time I use a skill made it difficult for me to finish the fight without killing myself. I died a couple times before deciding to take off that unique, after which the fight became much more manageable and I killed her on the first try. I won't go over every mini-boss I found like this, because there are actually quite a few and I don't want to spoil all of them, but I did want to show this one and to show one of the recurring themes of my experience with the bosses in this game, in that it's trial and error, and minor adjustments to either your equipment or gems can make a pretty big difference early on. Killing the witch gave me a support gem, so I picked up Ignition, which gives skills 100% more chance to ignite. Continuing on, it wasn't too much longer until I found the first real boss, the Devourer. He will pop up out of the ground and shoot you from a distance, and occasionally try to slam you with his tail. As a sorcerer, I didn't find this one too bad, killed it on the first try, just avoid his range attacks and watch out for when he goes underground so he doesn't pop up on top of you. After killing him, he dropped a pretty nice set of boots that I equipped and an uncut skill gem, so I decided to upgrade my Flame Wall. As you level up, you'll get passive points to spend, and unlike in PoE 1, I never felt too stressed or worried that I was making a wrong choice when I spent them. It's so nice to know that I can pick up something or go towards a node that looks decent in the moment and easily adjust them later on. At some point, an ice staff with freezing shards dropped, and that became one of my main skills. It shoots out a number of projectiles and builds up freeze, which makes it a great combo with my Flame Wall. You can drop a Flame Wall, and then when the shards go through it, they become empowered by the fire, dealing extra fire damage and inflicting Ignite, which then deals even more fire damage over time. The next boss I killed I won't show, but he gave me a run for my money, And when I finally killed him, I got an uncut support gem that I turned into the chain support and added to my freezing shards, which makes freezing shards do 50% less damage, but they chain to other enemies. This was really nice for packs of enemies because you're not limited to the initial projectiles, and each enemy hit chains directly to another enemy. And if either the initial projectile or the chained one go through the flame wall, then the extra projectile also has the extra fire damage and ignite, making it pretty good at clearing out groups of enemies. Then I put the magnified effect support on flame wall, which increases its AoE size by 40%, and the expanse support on my Ice Nova, which increases its cooldown but also increases its AoE size by 50%. The way skills and supports all interact with each other, combined with the ease of changing skills and trying new things, makes it really fun and rewarding to experiment with them and see what really works well together. Skipping forward a bit, I came across a boss that gave me a bit of a hard time, and I think this is the boss that I died to the most. Even though I died over and over again, it felt good, and I felt like if I just played it right, it was very doable. I knew what I had to do, I just had to execute it properly. I engaged the fight, drop down some AoE, drop the flame wall, and start shooting through it. Freeze him, refresh the AoE, avoid his attacks, rinse and repeat. His slams hit hard, so one of those, if I wasn't completely topped off, would kill me, and it did. Over and over. But I kept getting better and better with repeated attempts, and at one point, I had a realization about my freezing shards. Since I was playing against a single boss, the chain support was only making things harder. It couldn't chain to other enemies and was doing 50% of its damage. So I removed that, and that helped quite a bit. Still had a couple more deaths, but then was finally able to kill him, and it felt so good. Shortly after that, I picked up Frostbolt, which shoots out a ball of ice, and then I gave it the scatter shot and glaciation supports that make it so that it shoots out extra projectiles and causes more freeze buildup. Then I also picked up Cold Snap, which basically shatters the enemies that are frozen, or can shatter the Frostbolt when that goes out, and I gave it a support gem of Controlled Destruction, which makes it deal more damage, but it can't critical hit. Oh, and then I also got this Raging Spirits buff that basically makes it so that my fire spells will summon Flaming Skull minions that deal extra damage. And that basically brings me to my current build and what I've been running around with. And I'm having an absolute blast with it. One little tip I will add is that I would recommend checking out the shops whenever you're in town and see if there's anything you can pick up. Because I have noticed you can find some really nice items there. This staff that I got, for example, that has freezing shards, came with cold damage and +2 level to all cold skills. It was just a blue magic item at the time, which I then upgraded to a rare, but you can also find rare items, like this fire staff, for example. With a level 5 firebolt, 49% increased fire damage, extra mana, extra critical spell damage, extra intelligence, mana regenerate. That is a great staff. Or even this one that just has +2 level to all fire spell skills. Throw a couple extra modifiers on there and it could go from great to amazing for your build if you're someone that primarily uses fire spells. Once again, I'd just like to apologize that portions of this video were in a little bit lower resolution there, but the problem is fixed, so it shouldn't happen anymore in the future. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to throw it a like or subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments below if you've been enjoying early access or what you've been playing, or if you're still on the fence and trying to decide. I will say if you are in that boat and this looks at all enjoyable for you, I would definitely check it out. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.